For family and existing close bonds, the roots that still hold you. In the later years of life, especially after 70, we begin to see relationships through a different lens, not with urgency, but with clarity. The noise of large friend groups and fleeting social circles begins to fade. In its place, something far more powerful rises to the surface, the quiet, steady presence of family and long-standing bonds. These are not the relationships you choose lightly or temporarily. These are the ones that have weathered time, conflict, distance, and change, and still remain. There's a reason why family, in all its imperfect forms, begins to take center stage in our hearts as we age. It's because family holds the roots of our identity. Within them are the stories, the memories, the familiar laughter, and sometimes the old scars that shaped us. They remind us of where we've been, what we've survived, and who we've always been beneath the noise of the world. Your children, now grown, become more than just dependents, they become companions. They carry parts of you in the way they speak, think, or raise their own families. There's a deep satisfaction in seeing your influence ripple quietly through the next generation. And even if your children live far away, or contact is infrequent, the bond never truly breaks. It lives in every birthday call, every shared memory, every glance that says, "I know where you come from, because I come from there too." If you are blessed with grandchildren, you know the special joy they bring, a joy that is softer, less pressured, and more innocent than parenthood. You get to love them with a freedom you may not have had with your own children. You listen more, you rush less. You savor the moments, their questions, their laughter, even their messes, because you know how quickly time passes. And for those who do not have children or grandchildren, the concept of family still thrives. It could be siblings, cousins, neighbors, or dear friends who've become chosen family. These are the people who've known you through your seasons, who've seen your light and your darkness, and stood by anyway. Their presence is no longer about excitement, but about comfort, familiarity, trust. As we grow older, it is not the new that gives us strength, it is the familiar. The shared jokes, the old photographs, the holiday traditions, the long retold stories. In a world that's constantly changing, these bonds are your anchors. They bring you back to yourself. There's also something sacred about becoming the elder in your family. You are no longer just part of the tree, you are the root. The wisdom you carry is hard-earned. You've lived through decades of history, personal and global. You've made choices, seen the consequences, and found peace. And now, your voice matters in a new way. You're the storyteller, the guide. The one who can say, "I've been there, and you'll get through it too." Being part of a family at this stage also means learning to forgive. Letting go of old wounds, choosing peace over pride, and understanding that time is too short for bitterness. You begin to value connection over being right. You reach out not because you have to, but because love, once matured, becomes more generous and less demanding. It's also a time when you may need help, and family becomes the arms you can lean on. Accepting help is not weakness, it is part of the beautiful circle of life. You cared for others, and now they care for you. And even if your family cannot be physically present, often their love still reaches you, through calls, letters, prayers, or simply in the legacy they carry forward. And sometimes, the bond isn't even spoken. It's in the way your daughter cooks your recipe, the way your son repeats your advice, the way your grandchild hugs you without needing a reason. These small acts, these echoes of you, are proof that your presence still shapes lives. So in this quiet season of life, cherish these existing close bonds, nourish them. Call your sister, visit your cousin, forgive an old friend, hug your child. Sit with your spouse, even in silence, because these are the relationships that outlast the trends and distractions of the world. They are the ones that matter when the days grow shorter and the heart grows softer. And if you feel alone, remember, it's never too late to reach out, never too late to rebuild. Sometimes, even one phone call, one invitation, or one "I've been thinking about you" can reignite a bond that still has life in it. Because in the end, we don't remember the parties or the noise. We remember the people who stood by us, who knew our flaws and loved us still. Who were there in the quiet and in the storm. Family, by blood or by choice, are the ones who still hold your hand when the rest of the world lets go. 5. Greater self-reliance and wisdom, the quiet strength within. By the time we reach the age of 70, we have walked through nearly every type of season life has to offer: joy and heartbreak, growth and loss, health and illness, connection and solitude. We've lived long enough to see how life changes in cycles, how things break and mend, and how no season, no matter how difficult, lasts forever. And in this process, something powerful takes root inside us: self-reliance, built not on pride, but on quiet, unshakable wisdom. Self-reliance in your later years isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't come from always being right or always being strong. Instead, it comes from knowing that you have survived, not once, not twice, but over and over again. You've navigated illness. You've mourned people you loved. You've adjusted to new chapters, unexpected turns, and painful goodbyes, and still, you're here. There is a strength in that survival that no book, no title, no degree can ever teach. It's a kind of strength that only time, struggle, and experience can carve into the soul. You begin to realize that even when others weren't there, even when you didn't know what would come next, you found your way, and that realization changes everything. In your earlier life, you may have doubted yourself often, questioning your choices, seeking others' approval, wondering if you were good enough. But in your 70s and beyond, you begin to trust your own voice more. You don't need as many opinions. You don't rely on outside validation. You listen to your gut, because it has proven itself right again and again. And it's not just decision-making that improves, it's emotional resilience too. Small things don't shake you the way they used to. You don't panic at the first sign of a problem. You don't overreact to every change. You've seen too much to be easily rattled. You've learned when to speak and when to stay silent, when to fight and when to walk away. You've learned the power of patience and the deeper power of letting go.
You also learn to live without the noise of ego. You don't need to compete. You don't need to impress. You no longer feel the urge to compare your life to others. The success of others doesn't threaten you. You know now that every person walks their own path, with their own struggles and their own timing. You don't envy, you empathize. Because you've lived enough to understand. Everyone carries something, even if they don't show it. Self-reliance also shows up in the way you handle loneliness. It doesn't frighten you like it once did. You understand that solitude is not emptiness, it's space. Space for thinking, space for resting, space for creating. You may enjoy being with others, but you no longer need constant company to feel whole. You are no longer afraid to be alone with your thoughts, because those thoughts over the years have become kinder, wiser, and more forgiving. And perhaps most significantly, your wisdom becomes a gift, not just to yourself, but to others. People may come to you for advice. They may sit quietly by your side just to absorb your calm. You've become a living library of stories, lessons, and perspectives that younger generations deeply need. You have nothing to prove, only truths to pass on. So if you ever feel like you're slowing down, remind yourself, your value doesn't lie in how fast you move or how much you do. It lies in your presence, in your stillness, in the way you've learned to carry peace through chaos, the way you've become a lighthouse, not a boat, steady, grounded, illuminating the way for others. That is the power of age. That is the beauty of becoming self-reliant. You no longer chase life, you understand it. You no longer fear it, you trust it. And through that trust, you live with a quiet dignity that only decades of living can give. Because in the end, the strongest people aren't always the loudest. They are the ones who keep standing, keep learning, and keep loving, long after the storms have passed. 6. Less social anxiety and comparison. Finally free to just be one of the most unexpected and beautiful gifts of aging is the gradual quieting of the constant voice that once whispered, "You're not enough." That inner critic that always compared, always measured, always doubted. As we enter our 70s and beyond, something within us begins to soften. And in that softening, we discover freedom. Freedom from comparison, freedom from insecurity, freedom from the social anxiety that once followed us like a shadow. In our younger years, we are constantly performing. There's pressure to look a certain way, live a certain lifestyle, have the right house, the right relationships, the right social circle. Even happiness becomes something we're expected to display, with perfect photos, smiling faces, and busy schedules that make us appear valuable and loved. But the truth is, much of that performance is rooted in fear. Fear of being judged, fear of not measuring up, fear of being left out or forgotten. Yet as time passes, and especially after the age of 70, that fear begins to lose its grip. Because you've seen enough to know that appearances are just that, appearances. You've seen people with perfect lives on the outside crumble inside. You've known people who looked happy in public but cried in silence at night. And you've realized that true contentment has nothing to do with comparison and everything to do with inner peace. You begin to care less about what others are doing and more about how you feel. You stop looking sideways at your neighbors, your relatives, or old friends, and you start looking inward. What do you enjoy? What matters to you? What brings you peace? That shift is monumental. You might no longer attend every social event, and you don't feel guilty about it. You might say less in group conversations and still feel confident in your presence. You no longer need to be seen or validated. You are content in your own company, your own skin, your own choices. And that freedom from comparison doesn't make you bitter. It makes you generous. You can now celebrate other people's joy without questioning your own. When a friend takes a vacation, you smile. When a neighbor buys a new car, you're happy for them. When someone else succeeds, you no longer hear that old voice that says, "Why not me?" Because you know now, their joy doesn't take anything away from yours. There's also a freedom in accepting who you are, not who you used to be or who the world says you should be, but who you are right now. You may have wrinkles, gray hair, slower steps, or a quieter lifestyle, but those are not flaws. They are your truth. And with every passing year, you learn to wear that truth with pride. You dress for comfort, not for judgment. You speak from wisdom, not from a need to impress. You show up in the world as you are, without apology and without armor. That's the beauty of growing older. You've spent so many years editing yourself for others, and now finally you stop. Social anxiety, the fear of saying the wrong thing, not being liked, not being enough, begins to disappear. You realize that people are too busy worrying about themselves to judge you as harshly as you once feared. And even if they do judge you, it doesn't matter. Their opinions hold less power than ever before, because now you live for peace, not for approval. Even the fear of being alone starts to ease. Loneliness may still visit, but it no longer defines you. You understand that being alone doesn't mean you're unloved. It just means you've learned to love your own presence. And that's something many people never get to experience, a deep, soulful friendship with themselves. That's the beauty of growing older. You've spent so many years editing yourself for others, and now finally you stop. Social anxiety, the fear of saying the wrong thing, not being liked, not being enough, begins to disappear. You realize that people are too busy worrying about themselves to judge you as harshly as you once feared. And even if they do judge you, it doesn't matter. Their opinions hold less power than ever before, because now you live for peace, not for approval. Even the fear of being alone starts to ease. Loneliness may still visit, but it no longer defines you. You understand that being alone doesn't mean you're unloved. It just means you've learned to love your own presence. And that's something many people never get to experience, a deep, soulful friendship with themselves.